Hi, my name's Jamie. This is Derek. We're both here with the Bank Card Group. And what we're going to be discussing today is some closing techniques. We constantly get questions from people out in the field. What do I do now? How do I close? What are closing techniques? What are some examples of how I go about closing? So we're going to discuss some of that today. I know, Derek, you said that you start off with 5 things that you say are important closing techniques or an important part of the close. And really they're kind of goals. Would you not say that from a rep perspective? And what are those 5 goals?
I believe so. Jamie, I know that when I was in the field, one of the things that would happen to me constantly was a lot of times I would feel disappointment or failure when I would walk into a merchant's location and introduce myself to them, and I expected to close a deal. I was out there trying to close a deal. And obviously that's our ultimate goal is we all want to close the deal. That's how we get paid. But there's steps in between meeting somebody and closing a deal that can also create success for a salesperson. For example, I've created a 5-step kind of scenario saying that these to me are the steps of success in closing a sale. And the first one is to actually walk in, introduce yourself to a merchant, and get to know their name and understand what their position is with the company that they work for. To me, that's a level of success. The second level would be having a dialogue with that decision maker about their merchant services and about their business, and ask a few questions to maybe build that bond a little more securely between you and the merchant, because obviously that's what merchants are looking for, is that trust factor and that bond between them and their salesperson. The third step would obviously be to pick up a statement, because to close a deal, most of the time we need a statement so we can do the comparison or the analysis for them. That's what most merchants are looking for, is how much money can you save me? The fourth step, in my opinion, would be setting that presentation appointment. To be able to come back and to present that statement, to present the options that we've come up with for them, and show them the benefits of doing business with the Bank Card Group. And then, of course, the fifth and final goal, which is the ultimate goal that we all have, is to close that deal. Now, in my opinion, if you reach any one of these levels, you've succeeded. I believe that you shouldn't set out to always just close a deal. Obviously, if you can close that deal, that's a fantastic day. That's a fantastic call. But if you've reached any one of those levels, you should consider yourself successful at it.
So if I'm a brand new rep, like most people that are watching this video, so I shouldn't go out there expecting to close the deal that first day? I need to go out there and have a different expectation?
No, I wouldn't say that, Jamie. I mean, you always want to close a deal, obviously,
Okay.
So you should set your goals really high. You should set your goals to where you achieve the close of the deal and the commission and getting paid, and that's a great level of success, obviously. I just don't want you to think that you failed if you've reached any one of those other levels of completion. And what I mean by that is, so many times in our industry, we hear from different merchants saying, hey, a rep came in here and signed me up and I've never seen him since. Or I get 100 of you folks that come in here and ask me for my statement or tell me you can save me money. What they're really saying, in my opinion, is they need to build some kind of bond with you. They need to build some kind of relationship with you. They need to get to know you and your company. How long you've been around, what can you do for them other than just coming in and saying, I can save you money. So it may take 2 or 3 or 4 or even as many as a dozen calls on that customer before you make sure that you can pick up the statement and do the analysis for them and earn their business. So in that matter, if that's the case, I heard a story a long time ago about a California redwood grows 50 feet in 7 years, but it only grows 2 feet in the first 5 years. My question would be, did it grow 50 feet in 7 years, or did it grow just in the last 3 years? And it's the same thing with a sales call, I think. It takes some kind of massaging, if you will, to make sure that sometimes you earn that business the way you should.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, because if I'm a brand new rep, what you're basically telling me is I could see a merchant 12 times, so it could honestly be, 4, 6, 8 weeks before I sign my first deal?
There's a good chance of that. And sometimes the best thing to know about that type of customer is if it took you 4 or 6 weeks to earn their business, chances are once you earn their business, they're not just going to leave you overnight.
Okay, but on the same token, or on the opposite side, it's very realistic that I can sign a merchant today or tomorrow, my first day in the field?
Absolutely. You're going to call on a merchant, and depending on where that merchant sits with their current merchant service situation, they may be ready to move real quick. They may be a decision maker that doesn't need that time frame to get to know you. There are folks that feel like they know you or have that instant bond with you just in a moment's notice. It also can be people that you have visited in the community before. Maybe you patron those places, the restaurants you go to, the stores you call on, that you and your family walk into and buy things. You may know those business owners. And of course, those transactions may not take quite as long as somebody that you don't know at all.
So in a nutshell, let me just get this 5-point process, because what you're talking about is ultimately we want to close the deal, right? That's
Correct.
how everybody gets
correct.
paid.
Absolutely.
But there's other points of success. So meaning that, there's going to be those merchants that may take, 4 or 5 times to visit. And there's going to be those merchants that you can close on the first visit. So really you can accomplish you can accomplish 1 through 3 of those steps in the first call, or you can accomplish 1 through 5 in that first call, or that first call or that 1 through 5 step process may take 4 visits.
That's
So
correct.
it's important to know that it can be any of those.
That's correct.
But it's feeling that level of success other than just walking in and getting a business card off the counter and walking out, because really that's not a level of success.
Correct.
Getting the business owner's name, that's a level of success. Meeting the business owner, having a dialogue with them, that's a success. Getting the statement, that's a success. Obviously doing the analysis, or the bank card group here at the corporate office will do the analysis. And then going back and actually closing that deal. All of those are successes.
That's correct. And what you want to keep in mind is if you've obtained one of those levels, move on to the next level. Continue that sales call to where you're moving on to the next level. And that way, if you don't reach the 3rd level, you know that you've reached 1 and 2. And that's going to create more success, because let's face it, we're all salespeople. And we all like that egotistical feeling that we've succeeded and we're the best out there. So if you don't feel failure, if you've set yourself up to walk in there and know that you can only succeed if you close a deal, well, then you're going to set yourself up for a lot of failures, and we don't want that to happen. So set yourself up to say, listen, if I obtain level 1, I'm going for level 2. And if I get level 2, I'm going for level 3. And keep moving yourself through that sales call. But just don't feel that you failed if you haven't closed the deal.
So if I was watching this video right now, I'd be like, okay, well, he didn't tell me how to close the deal. So obviously we talked about those 5 steps here. Well, how do I close the deal? I mean, show me the secret.
That's a great question. That's a great question. What I do when I'm in the field, and what I try to help folks to understand is you're always closing. You want to walk in, and from the time you meet the merchant, you start having that dialogue, you're asking closing questions. Those closing questions are going to be different with each merchant and each sales rep. What you want to keep in mind is you're always trying to direct that merchant to where you're trying to get them to go, and that's the close, obviously. You want to ask them questions such as, we call them hot button questions, such as, who is your current processor? How do you like them? What are some of the things you would change about them? What is it that you're looking for in a merchant service vendor? Things of that nature. That will open up that dialogue, and hopefully that merchant will start talking to you about other things. If you ask them close-ended questions and you get a yes or a no, you're not creating a dialogue there. And therefore, I believe you're not asking closing questions.
So when you say close-ended questions, I hate to interrupt you, but when you say close-ended questions, you said yes or no. So what you're saying is you want to ask a question that incites more of a conversation than a yes or no.
That's correct.
Okay, so an example of that would be, how do you like your merchant services provider?
Correct.
Because they can't answer yes or no. They have to
That's
say,
correct.
well, I really like them, or I really dislike them, or I've been with them for such and such time.
That's correct.
Okay.
You're correct in saying that. You want to get that customer to open up and start talking to you. I've got a little theory in sales that I've tried to live by for a long time. Folks have to buy from people they like. Well, if they don't know you, they can't like you. But once they get to know you, they'll start liking you, and then it's kind of an unwritten rule that they're going to buy from you eventually. Maybe not today, but eventually they'll buy from you. And if you don't ever have that dialogue and get them to start knowing you, and you get to start knowing them, you're not going to ever get them to like you. So you want to open up that dialogue, ask those questions that are open-ended, get them to open up and have those conversations, and it's not easy. Sometimes in the beginning, you're going to come across merchants that are going to kind of just try to shut you down real quick by answering a question, no or yes. And what you want to do is think to yourself, I've got to find these questions that will get this merchant to open up. You want to practice those. You want to have those in your little toolkit. And if you practice those, you'll be more versed when you walk in there and they give you a no or a yes, how to move from that no or yes to an open-ended question.
I know when I was in the field, I know it's been some time, and you're out in the field a lot more than I am. One thing that I used to ask, and I know that I've heard you say this before, but one thing that I used to ask, they'd give me the statement, I'd go back and do an analysis. Before I ever left that business and I had that statement in hand, I'd tell the merchant, Mr. Merchant, I know I'm going to save you money. We are going to be able to present savings to you. But savings alone are not going to earn your business. What else do I need to accomplish to earn your business? And a lot of times, when you ask that question, and the key here is asking that question, what else do I need to do to earn your business? And stop and be quiet and wait until you get that answer.
That's correct.
Because sometimes they'll look at you like a deer in headlights and be like, you got to wait for that answer. Because eventually they're going to answer and they're going to say, well, what do you mean? Well, now that just opened it up for
That's
other
correct.
products and services that we may have. Or they may say, well, you know what? If you save me money, that's enough. And they give you the answer that you need so that when you come back and make that presentation, Mr. Merchant, you know, we talked about savings. I knew that I could give you savings. I've got savings here, but you told me that if this was going to happen, next day funding, for example, if we could provide next day funding, that you would move forward. Do you remember that, or do you agree with that? And they would say yes, and then it's almost
Right.
like the deal's already closed.
And that's a real good point, because that leads me into to something I want to talk a little bit about. Is I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of salespeople make is when they're out there asking these questions to merchants, is they're so quick to respond with the answer. They're so quick to respond with how much they know. And I believe that if you're truly going to close a deal and you're going to do it with power and authority and consultative type selling, is you need to hold those answers back for your presentation. And what I mean by that is this, just like Jamie had said, if you're asking a merchant questions such as, how do you feel about the time frame it takes to get your money? Some merchants take 2 or 3 days. How do you feel about how often your rep comes around to see you? Some merchants don't see their reps very often. These type of questions, don't come right back and answer them with, well, we come by, you know, once a month, or we do next day funding. I think it's very smart if you hold those answers. Now, if the merchant outright asks you, how does yours work? Obviously, you want to give them that answer. But I think if you hold that until you come back with the presentation, I think it's going to give you so much more power. And I'd actually, Jamie, like to demonstrate quickly, if we can,
Sure.
a presentation. If once we've picked up the statement and I'm returning to you with the presentation, I'd like to kind of go through that of how I would do that, and then maybe you could even show us what you did when you were in the field as well.
Oh, absolutely. I want to clarify something, though, before we go into that. I think that's a great point. Because when you say hold those answers, I want to clarify what he's talking about here. Because if you ask a merchant, well, when do you get your money? Oh, I don't get it for 2 or 3 days. Most salespeople want to immediately jump in and
That's
say,
correct.
hey, we can get it to you tomorrow. What he's saying is hold that back, hold that urge to solve their problem
correct.
immediately until you come back and say, hey, I remember, Mr. Merchant, that you said you don't get your funds for 2 or 3 days. How would you feel if I could give it to you tomorrow? And you're coming back, and then
That's correct.
And at that moment in time, that's when you're giving that answer, or that power punch.
I think so.
Answering that hot button, because as salespeople, we kind of want to jump into that immediately.
It just makes your presentation that much more powerful when you come back. If you've answered all their questions and then you come back with the savings, really the only thing you have left to talk about is, well, Jamie, I've saved you $50 this month. And Jamie says, okay, I'll let you know. Instead of sitting down and having that dialogue with them and showing them what our company can offer them and what you can offer them as a sales rep, and then it has so much more of an impact on the savings. Besides the fact, Jamie, you know as well as I do that there's been times where we've taken statements back, and of course we attempt, 99% of the time we always save folks money, but there has been that time or two where a merchant has had a really, really good deal, and maybe the savings is not as powerful as we wanted it to be, and then therefore we have to come back with some kind of information that leaves a real impact on the merchant.
Yeah, we kind of come back and don't know what to say because we're like, we're not saving you any money because we don't have that hot button. That's how important that hot button is, so that when you come back, people buy on emotions. And if we throw out all of our emotions before we even do the presentation, like next day funding or gift cards or cash advances, we throw out all those emotions. The merchant gets all emotional and they're excited. And then we come back a week later and they've had everything go wrong in the last week at their work.
That's correct.
And they're like, what do you want? And you're like, I saved you $50. And they go, okay, well, whatever.
Right.
So
and you're absolutely right. And I think that not only do you need to ask those questions, but you also need to ask how that affects their business, how that affects how they operate. For example, if a merchant doesn't receive their funding for 3 or 4 days, how does that affect their payroll? How does that affect them buying their products that they sell to their consumers? That can have a big impact on a lot of merchants. I know several merchants that live, just like most of us do, payday to payday, only they're supporting employees and a business that they're trying to run as well. So that can have a big impact on them, and you want to stir up that emotion. You really want to stir that up. You want to bring it to their forefront in the front of their head and get them to really think about, that is a very big and important thing in my business. So with that being said, I'd like to show you a presentation. A lot of things a lot of times I've seen salespeople walk right in and hand over an analysis to a customer and say, hey, great news, we've saved you $50. And like you said, if the emotion's not there, if that impact is not there, sometimes the merchants may be busy. Sometimes they may be in a situation where they don't have time. to sit and talk to you about it. They take the analysis and that's that, you know, and they'll say they'll give you a call. One of the things that I want to start off with before we go to that point, though, is when you're in talking to a merchant, the most important thing I can think you can do, like we were saying, is asking these questions, is you want to talk to them about coming back and doing the presentation. If you're not going to do the close right there, if it's a merchant that can't see you right at this point in time, and you're going to come back at a scheduled time, I think it's very important that you set those expectations while you're there. I think you really need to reiterate with the merchant exactly what they expect from you and let them know what you're expecting from them when you come back. And so therefore, I would say when you're talking to the merchant, Jamie, if you were my merchant, I think that if you gave me this statement and I said, okay, great, is next week at the same time going to work for you? And you agreed with that. At that point in time, I would have to make sure that I said, listen, Jamie, just so I understand what we're going to do, number one, you're the one who makes that decision and there's nobody else that has to be involved. Am I correct?
Yes.
You sound a little hesitant, Jamie. Is there
Well,
somebody else that may need to-
I got to talk to my wife. I mean,
Okay,
of course.
I understand that. Is there a chance that your wife would be here next week?
No, she doesn't come into the
She
office.
doesn't come in. Okay. But does your wife usually kind of side with you? If you think it's a smart business move, is she going to pretty much agree with that?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great.
course.
The second thing I want to ask you, Jamie, is just so I know what to bring and how to come prepared. When I come, if I've met all the goals that you're asking me about and all the qualifications that you're asking me and the things that are important to you and your business, is there anything else that could stand in the way of us doing business?
No, I mean, if you save me money, and I mean, I talked about some of the ails, I guess, that I have right now, and yeah, if you can save me money, I don't see why I wouldn't.
Fantastic, fantastic. Just so I got it all clear, when I come back next week at this time, I'm going to bring the presentation back to you. I'm also going to go ahead and bring the paperwork with me. That way, I'll make sure I have everything we need and we can get you started as soon as possible and get you saving that money that we're going to show you.
Yeah, if you can solve those problems.
If we
that
meet all those
discussed.
problems.
Yeah.
And just let me recap some of those problems we talked about. We talked about obviously saving money, which everybody wants to do, especially in these times.
Right.
And of course, we're going to save you as much money as we possibly can. But just so I don't insult you or waste your time, can you give me an idea? You said you wanted to save a lot of money. What is, when your current provider earned your business, what kind of money did they save you? Do you remember that?
I mean, I think they probably saved me, $100 or something like
Oh,
that. But
okay.
the rep never came back. And then, the second week into it, I didn't get my deposit when I was supposed to get my deposit. It just, I don't know. I felt like I was sold.
Okay.
I felt like I was
Okay.
kind of like pitched and then never taken care of after the fact.
I understand that. I understand. And I will tell you this, Jamie, and I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I will tell you this. Our company, their most upfront concern is to make sure that they take care of not only their employees, but their merchants as well, because we know we won't have the other without the first one. So we're definitely going to take care of you, and I'm going to show you where I can handle all that stuff. And just to recap that, we talked about saving money. We talked about next day funding, that you wished you had the next day funding. We talked about some kind of support system where a rep came by once in a while and let you know they were still alive and that you were still important to them. And then we also talked about that 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week service that you would have when you called in. So I'm going to bring all those solutions back to you that we find that we can offer you from our company. But when I come back, I'm going to also bring that paperwork to you. And we'll have all that stuff ready for you. Now, let me just ask you a couple questions, if I might, just real quick, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but are you a corporation or are you a sole proprietor?
No, I'm a sole proprietor.
Sole proprietor, great, okay, fantastic. And you just have the one location, correct? I just don't want to assume.
Well, my wife has the other location.
Okay, fantastic, that works great. So if we earned your business and did a real good job for you, there's probably a pretty good chance we could earn your wife's business as well.
Oh, yeah, we'd want to be with the same provider.
Fantastic, that sounds great. Well, I'll come back here next week then at the same time, and we'll get this presentation all put together for you, okay?
Sounds good.
So that's what I would really talk to the merchant about first. I would set that up so there's no false expectations. The biggest thing that I think happens with a lot of salespeople is they think that they have a deal that they don't really have. And what I mean by that is the merchant thinks they're just going to drop by a presentation, show them a savings, and move on, and they'll make a decision a week or two down the road. Or maybe the merchant doesn't really have the intentions of making a decision right now because they can't for some reason. And so that's why I think you really need to set those expectations up front. Now, when I come back with the presentation, I wouldn't just walk in and hand over the savings.
Okay.
I would want to recap everything. Like Jamie said earlier, we want to bring those emotions back to the front. We want to bring that emotion and put it on the table and say, do you remember this? So when I walked in with the presentation portfolio that we provide you at the BankCard Group, I would walk in and I would start talking to them about the presentation that we've prepared for you. Go through some of the things that we offer as the BankCard Group.
Now let me clarify this. Would you go through all of these, or would you go through what was my hot button or the merchant's hot
I would
button?
go through what's really your hot button. But as I'm paging through this, obviously you're going to see things that may be important to you that we didn't talk about.
Okay.
Because let's face it, the best salesperson on earth still doesn't talk about every single topic that the merchant may have on the front of their mind. So I'm going to walk back in and I'm going to talk to Jamie and I'm going to say, hey, is now still a good time? Do you have enough time for me? If Jamie says he's busy, if Jamie says he doesn't really have time, can I leave it? I'm going to reschedule. I do not want to leave something for Jamie for him to take and look at and decide for himself in his own interpretation. I want to make sure that I'm here so I can see Jamie's emotion, I can see his facial expression when he makes that decision.
That's very important. You know, I know you have an analysis, and let me see one of those analyses real quick, right in the front page.
Correct.
So basically you're saying to me, this is an example of an analysis. What you're saying to me is if you hand this to me and you say, okay, I'll see you next week and make a decision, I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to look at it and go, yeah, because it's dry. There's no activeness. There's no emotion in that. There's no.
That's correct.
Versus you go, hey, you talk to me and you get that emotion and then you're like, bam, and look, I'm saving
correct.
you, $1,000.
And that's really what we're trying to do. We want to go through the presentation a little bit and page through them, talk about the hot buttons that we had talked about before. I want to address each one of those issues with you. Now, what I do when I'm in the field is I actually, after I go through the presentation, I put the binder down. I put the portfolio down. I don't leave the analysis sitting out for the merchant to start looking at and I lose their attention. I'll set it down on the table and then I'll talk about those hot button things again. And I'll say, Jamie, if you recall, we talked about next day funding and how important that was to you because it helps you to make payroll. Yes. And that's one of the solutions that we found for you. And so how do you think that's going to help your business that you can make payroll on time?
If you can give me the money the next day, I mean, that's tremendous.
You see the emotion, and Jamie's not even a merchant, but you can see that emotion, that is something important to him. And so what you're finding is there's been times where maybe he hasn't been able to make payroll because the money's not there, and the headache he's went through because of that. Then at that point in time, I would address each issue, and that's going to be different with each merchant. So you're going to address each issue. And then I'm going to ask Jamie, with all of those features based on your current processor, how much more money do you think you would spend to have those niceties that we talked about?
Well, I mean, I want all those features, but you said you were
Okay.
going to save me money, right?
And that's correct.
So
But do you think that that's worth more money or even the same amount of money that you spend?
the same? I don't want to pay more, but
Okay.
yeah, the same. I mean, yeah.
Okay,
I mean, yeah.
so what I've done right now is I've just busted Jamie off his big savings. He may be looking for $1,000 a month, and now I've kind of busted him off that and said, okay, now Jamie's willing to spend the same amount of money that he spends with his current processor, but to have more. Now is going to be the big surprise for Jamie. Now I've got his emotion involved. Now he's thinking to himself, he's not going to save me any money. So now I'm going to present to him and say, Jamie, well, we've got really, really good news for you. If you liked what we're going to offer you, you're going to love this. Because not only, Jamie, am I going to take care of you personally, I live here in the community, I come by your place, I'm going to see you a lot. My company is a good, strong company with an A+ rating, and they're going to stand behind you 100%. You have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week 1-800 number that you can reach anybody you need to. And if you can't, you call me, and I'll take care of it for you. But on top of all that, Jamie, the best news is you're not going to pay any more money for that. We've actually found you a savings of $65 a month, and we're going to be able to take care of all your business and still put money back into your pocket.
That's awesome. So I've got an appointment to get to. What do you need from me?
Well, let's just take about 3 minutes. Do you have 3 minutes for me? Can we get some of this paperwork filled out? We can get the majority of it filled out for you. And then at that point in time, I'll get things rolling on my end, and then you can do your appointment and go back to business, and we'll go from there and get you all set up. All I've got to do here is in my portfolio, I keep a copy of my applications. I pull them out, I lay them down, and I know that there's been video training on the highlighted areas or the most important areas on an application. I go through those areas, or maybe I even come back with some of it pre-filled out based on my knowledge of the company, such as the address, the company name. I know that it's a sole proprietor because I asked Jamie earlier. I know that he's more than likely going to be the one signing everything. Now, if you remember, in the beginning, he said his wife may have to make the decision. But we've stirred up the emotion. We've got it right here on the table. Let's get it closed now.
Awesome.
Okay? That's how I would do the close.
Again, my name is Jamie with the Bank Card Group. This is Derek. This is our presentation of closing procedures. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to contact your manager or visit the following links. I think that was pretty good.
I think we're pretty good. Did I go?